and you are welcome to High Voltage on Volt 104.3 FM. This is where we review and analyze the news and talk about issues affecting us as citizens of Nigeria, ranging from politics, education, health, and other topical stories making rounds in the country. We are live on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, comment, and share the video. And you can also join us live on the studio by calling our phone lines, calling to the studio, be part of today's conversation, be part of what we are going to talk about this morning. 0706 048 5853 or 0915-570-8347. Please remember that whenever you call, your comment should be clean and very civil, so we don't break the rules while we are trying to make comments. All right, so this morning we are taking a look at the top stories in today's papers, and we're starting with the Guardian newspaper. On the main headline, parents struggle with steep tuition hike as schools wrestle rising OPEX. Parents struggle with steep tuition hike as schools wrestle rising OPEX. All right, so we still see Akpabio urges Nigerians to tarry, says Tinubu's reforms will bear fruits. The Senate President Godswill Akpabio asked Nigerians to be patient with the Tinubu administration. So he spoke at a gathering, the Catholic Church meeting, and he told the people that the reforms the government started will take time, but they will produce benefits later. So he frames the reforms as a nation building that needs endurance and collective efforts. So it's a political reassurance. It's asked citizens to accept short-term pain for expected long-term gains. But that message only works if people start to feel real improvements soon. All right, next on it, DAPMA warns against divisive narratives in downstream sector. The Depot and Petroleum Product Marketers Association of Nigeria warns that tensions and divisive stories in the oil downstream sector can harm fuel supply and distribution. So the group calls for calm, dialogue, and cooperation among stakeholders, and it warns that industrial actions or conflicts could lead to disruption of fuel availability nationwide. So the petroleum downstream is sensitive when industry players trade accusations or when public messages get messy, supply and prices can react quickly. So it's a call to avoid panic and politicizing everything. We saw what happened with Nupeng and Dangote. We saw just a day or 2 day strike. We saw the effect it had on the people. So they should always find a means, a way to dialogue instead of fighting each other. All right, so still on the Guardian newspaper, we see INEC, others tax on credible polls to avert protests. INEC others tax on credible polls to avert protests. Okay, so the main headline, we've already read it. So we see that many schools, the parents struggle with steep tuition hike in schools as schools wrestle rising OPEX. So many schools, especially the private ones, raise fees sharply for the new 2025/2026 session. So the rises range from roughly 25% to 100% depending on the school, and some mid-tier fees have jumped significantly compared with 5 years ago. So operators, they say that the operating expenses, that's the salary, the utilities, transport, food, and the supply, they go up because of inflation and costs. So about a third of parents say that they consider moving children from private to public schools because of costs, because of not being able to afford the private schools. So a lot of things are increasing in Nigeria: school fees, textbooks, so many things to buy, and you look at how much you are earning and you cannot afford this. Imagine paying for 5 persons or 2 children in a private school. That's a lot of money. Okay, so Guinness World Record School owners, leaders strategize to hold confab. Thus, the education stakeholders plan a big conference led by Teachers 2025 at Tafawa Balewa Square, Lagos. And they aim to mobilize more than 60,000 teachers for a Guinness World Record attempt. So the meeting is also a platform to discuss the teacher welfare, school growth, and sustainability, and to press for better incentives for teachers. So organizers want the event to draw national attention to teachers' needs. Okay, so next we have concerns as federal government implements new curriculum in basic high schools. It feels like today's headline is more of the education sector. All right, so the federal government releases a new national curriculum and signals immediate implementation for the 2025/2026 session. So many education stakeholders warn the rollout is rushed. So they say many schools lack facilities, they lack teacher training and resources to deliver the new subjects and methods. So stakeholders, they are worried that the poor preparation will harm the learning quality and widen the gap between well-resourced and under-resourced schools. Okay, so still on the Guardian newspaper, we see punish politicians in early election campaigns, Serap tells INEC. And we have 11 states may experience heavy rain this week. Federal government warns that 11 states may experience heavy rain this week. Okay, experts divided over Fubara's return as emergency rule expires Thursday. Experts divided over Fubara's return as emergency rule expires Thursday. So Rivers State has been under a 6-month emergency rule. We know that the governor was suspended earlier. So as the emergency period ends, some experts in the state disagree about the legal and political process for the governor's return. While some say the governor returns automatically, others say there is a fresh presidential or National Assembly action or court proceedings are needed. So the expiry reopens a power struggle in the state and is testing the legal and constitutional norms. All right, so let's see if there's more on the Guardian newspaper. Dawn blames poor nutrition policy execution for 45% child morbidity. Dawn blames poor nutrition policy execution for 45% child morbidity. That's the university professor says inadequate execution of nutrition policies contribute to high child morbidity. So he cites figures that nutrition problems contribute to about 45% of child sickness and mortality. He argues that policy design may exist, but poor implementation weakens outcomes for the children out there. So it highlights low progress on reducing stunting and malnutrition in children. So it's a health and policy failure story. Because good policies mean little if the delivery systems fail. If there are people that they don't enforce the laws, they create laws, they create policies, but nobody is there to ensure that these things are working properly. So there's urgent need for proper funding for monitoring and community level actions in all space. All right, so we are moving straight to Daily Independent newspaper. 6 months to deadline, only 14 banks have met recapitalization. The Central Bank of Nigeria set higher minimum capital requirements for banks. So for different levels by license. So the deadline is March 31, 2026. So that's about 6 months away from the paper date. So as of now, only a minority of banks, as the report said, that it's just 14, have reached the new capital thresholds. So many others still have funding gaps, and banks try to raise capital through rights issues, private placements, measures, or strategic investors. So this recapitalization drives forces consolidation, and big balance sheet moves across the industry. So it's a major banking sector reset It improves stability if it succeeds, but it also creates short-term disruption, possible consolidation, and stress for the mid-tier banks that cannot raise funds fast. So it creates a lot of stress, and or it is on the staff, because you now have to put more efforts on the marketers, and the stress is a lot for those working in those sector. All right, so without reforms, judiciary risk further public trust erosion. Lawyers said that without reforms, the judiciary risks further public trust erosion. And next we have September MPC. Analysts see CBN keeping rates steady. So ahead of the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee meeting, analysts expect the CBN to keep the interest rate steady. It explains why analysts think the bank will hold rates, inflation dynamics, currency management, and previous MPC signals, and it summarizes forecasts and policy implications. All right, don't dent your image by running in 2027. Sage tells Jonathan. So Sage tells Jonathan not to dent his image by running in 2027. As Professor Sage, the senior advocate of Nigeria, advises former President Goodluck Jonathan not to run for president in 2027. So he argues that running for 2027 presidency could harm Jonathan's public image and reputation. So it records the debate around whether past presidents should seek office again, and shows differing views among political actors. So is prominent figures calling on elder statesmen to stay out of the race shows anxiety about ticket dynamics and the optics of combat bids. There's been since we heard the story of Jonathan coming back, or though there's nothing official yet, but there's been a lot of do not come back this, remain a statesman, remain a respected statesman. It keeps coming from top political leaders, and we see the level of anxiety amongst the leaders. Maybe Jonathan is really a strong force against the ruling party. All right, so let's move on. Prevent strike by varsity unions. Pro-chancellors tell federal government to prevent strike by varsity unions. All right, next, Serap gives INEC 7 days to punish politicians over early campaigns. We saw this in the previous paper, and that Serap gives INEC 7 days to punish politicians over early campaigns. So what this story is all about is that they have given INEC a 7 days ultimatum to sanction politicians who campaign early. So the NGO says INEC must use its powers and not let early campaigning become normal.